Hey, all, good evening, good morning, good afternoon if you're watching this. For the audio people, it's a lovely afternoon here in beautiful, beautiful, humid, almost 100-degree Georgia. If you're somebody who, well, that's if you're visual. If you're somebody who's just doing the audio, I hope you are enjoying the sounds of my calm, soothing voice. Anyway, uh, welcome to the Man Talk Monday podcast. This is going to be streamed across YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, etc. I'll drop the link. And of course, you'll be able to stream this through the audio platform of your choice, whether that be Google, Spotify, Apple, etc. But yeah, anyway, today's topic, instead of crashing out. So, if you're listening to this, it's been about a week since we recorded the most recent Bridging Generations Voices of Men. If you're listening to this now, you should watch Bridging Generations Voices of Men tonight at 7:30. Um, yeah, that's too many ums for me. Normally, I don't do that, but I'll get straight to it because I really want this. I'm trying to format this to where we're under 30 minutes. So, in that, at the end of every episode of Bridging Generations Voices of Men, what we do is we try to detail something that's like a lasting thought for men, women, anyone who it is who's listening. And in last week's episode, I emphasized not crashing out, which one of the younger co hosts that night, Rex, understands. Crashing out is a term that a certain demographic youth used to describe someone just losing it, uh, committing acts that could result from everything from self-harm, hurting others, just man, outright danger. The thought behind it, from my understanding of talking to younger cousins and relatives and coworkers, is crashing out developed from them hearing it from their OGs and older people talk about, these young people, they move like crash test dummies, to which those of us who were old enough, we remember the crash test dummies. It was, they used them in videos for, cars back in the day to show the reliability and the safety features of a vehicle. And then they parlayed that into like a whole cartoon. And then they sold toys. And it was a pretty brilliant idea to take something that was real, something that was actual, something that was tangible that you saw for us as kids in the adult world and commercial and advertising spaces to sell safety. And then they just flipped that and were like, we could sell toys to kids. But it developed out of that because in those crash test dummies were exactly that. They were used for that, to crash out, for danger, for hey, how do we implement these features to not get anybody hurt? Let's just throw this dummy in there because this dummy is useless. And that's crashing out. People who just move in a way where mentally, if you're somebody who, I got in a lot of fights in my youth, if you're someone who's been in a fight or a scrap or a fisticuff or whatever you want to call it, a fade, whatever, if there are points or instances where you might be in a fight and you black out, that's crashing out. People who, they just black out. They don't realize where they are, what it is, but it's just all the rush of emotions and anger arrive to a point where there's nothing they can do. They've lost it. And I want to discuss that. I wanted to discuss instead of crashing out. And I brought that up on Voices of Men because it appears right now that like it's crash out season. And the reason I said, for young men, for the dads, like people who myself are the divorced long distance dads, issues with your baby mama, your wife, your ex-wife, your current spouse, whatever it is. Last month was Men's Mental Health Month. And I think because other things were prioritized, we completely overlooked it. And I gave a stat of construction workers who commit suicide at a very high rate, specifically last year, in the year 2023. It was brought up in Voices of Men how, uh, no, it was brought up. I was with family, with my in laws, some of my in laws, and they were one of the cousins explained like the high suicide rate amongst people who work in even the dental field, specifically the dental field. I said, man, this is just like people's crashing out, just taking their lives, and it reached that point. I, you know, I so I said to myself, what do you do instead of crashing out? And a couple of days ago, I was on Twitter. His mama call him Twitter. I'm gonna call him Twitter. I'm not calling it that other thing. And something popped up on the timeline featuring Iman Shumpert. If you don't know who Iman Shumpert is, the NBA champion, former like 10, 11-year NBA pro, highly touted out of high school, like really, really good, like 3-and-D guy, 3-point shooter, defender. And he had this whirlwind relationship with Tiana Taylor, who's a dancer, choreographer, artist, and famous person. I knew her from being on my like Super Sweet 16 back in the day. And they had, their marriage, which is always the thing people see from the outside and go, oh, most folk just sexualize them. Ooh, look at him, look at her. And they had these kids, and their first child was born, and it was really amazing because she couldn't get to the hospital, and he basically called the ambulance and helped deliver his own child, and it was great. People were like, they're going to be together forever. It's amazing. They got divorced, and all of the the standard for anyone who's been divorced, all of the great things that you were while you were married, that's all out the window because somebody's got to get paid. A side needs to be told. Someone has to win. That's just how divorce goes. Most of the time it's not cordial, it's not respectful, it's pretty ugly, it's pretty nasty. And in this, there's infidelity and neglect and all of these things. Everything that this man was before, all of a sudden he wasn't. Uh, as a side note, I found it interesting with their relationship, that she was very honest and open that they regularly invited other women into the relationship, which to me, the second I read that, I was like, clock is ticking on this marriage. But this man, he goes through it, he has to give her a large lump sum, and he loses a lot of money. And back to what I saw on social media was it was a skit. He's been a content creator since, not really playing pro ball, podcasts, TV shows, he's on the shy, all of that. And he did a skit where he's walking out to, like his Lexus or his Benz or something. And the skit basically is someone running up to him going, you gave that woman millions. You can't afford this car no more. And they laugh and he stands there kind of this. And I thought the relationship he had with this woman, the post he would talk about her, the love they shared, these children's, the affection, all of this is gone, gone. He's giving up, even though he's a one percenter with his money, he's giving up significant paper. And I thought this is a crash out candidate. If this is someone who could come online and absolutely flip, he's helped bring his own child into the world. He's given up millions. He's been dragged through court. People call him all sorts of crazy things. But instead of crashing out, he makes this skit with a level of self-awareness where he kind of is able to just joke. And I'm sure, there's pain in some jokes, but for him, instead of crashing out, coming online, saying crazy stuff, this is what he does. And I found that interesting because I said he found an outlet that wasn't being angry, that wasn't being upset. And I think of First Peter, casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you. In those moments where, the divorce, the separations, the drama, the baby mom drama, all of the issues, there are so many men who elect to crash out. There are so many dudes who they jump online and they lash out and they're angry, or even worse, these madmen who are taking the lives of these women that have pushed them over the edge. These men who have resulted to abuse or self harm just because they hurt. And the reason I read that First Peter is you have to find something, someone an activity. I always tell people, look, man, take yourself to the house of God, go to the church, pray, focus. If your thing is meditation, you just sit down by yourself and quiet and you listen to music, do that. Was speaking with a relative about one of my younger relatives who really lacked a lot of structure and a lot of guidance. And there's an age gap between them and their parents. And they just weren't kind of able to get a hold of him to show him something. And he was crash test dummy. Love him dearly, but absolute crash test dummy. And he's found religion recently, not the Christian religion, but he's found a religion. And talking to family, they said, man, he shows up early, leaves late, does all these things. He's super focused, better parent, better. And I was like, they said, and I said, look, I don't agree with them religiously. However, this has provided him with some structure, with some guidance. It's improved his integrity, his conversations, his parenting, his husbandry. I'm not mad at it. And if those are the things that you need to seek, those are the things that you need to find, do that. You have to find something and do something instead of crashing out. You have to find an avenue to calm yourself, to give yourself peace. That might be, I will always say, well, might be, it will always be in Christ. It will always be in Jesus. So you're going to find it in the Word. But for some people, they're not there yet. Find it in something. What gives you peace? What gives you a peace of mind? What relaxes you? And I say this as someone who, at full disclosure, my peace was in my wife. My peace was in my family. So now, once those things were stripped from me, I had to have something else. So I always made sure, well, I have this. I have my walks, I have my runs, I have fishing, I have hunting, I have hikes, I have something that brings me closer to peace, that brings my mind to a space where, okay, we're now calm. You've got to have that. You have to have something that when you're riled up and angry, and I'm speaking directly, I'm speaking really to the men here, specifically to the fathers who don't live with their kids every day, who don't see them or talk to them every day. Whether that's, and not for you who choose not to talk to your kids, because you need to do better, because you need to do better. But for those who are, you don't have a choice or say in your children's life. You are now as the court, breaks it down, you are now the defendant or the respondent, the non-custodial parent, all those ugly words that we get involved with once courts are involved. You have all the baby mama drama. She won't let you talk to the kids. You have issues at work. Your spouse trip. All the men who the weight is on the world. I've spoken before on how everyone loves to quote, David encouraged himself in the Lord, forgetting that all hell had broken loose with David. Like, it was great to quote it, but where was David in life when that happened? And there are men out there who are facing this right now. There were men who last month contemplated getting themselves out of here. They thought, you know what, today's the last day. I haven't talked to my kids. I hate my job. My money's low. My old lady is tripping. My cousin is sick. My best friends are all my phone calls are about money. There's no happiness. There are tons of men who thought of taking their lives last month. There are a number of men who did. You have to find something that evens you out, something safe, a place, a space, an activity of safety for your mind so that you don't crash out. Every day on the news, there's sadly some other report of father, ex-husband, baby daddy, and taking, and I always see this, and the thing that I always ask two questions. One, how long how long did this man feel this way? And two, what was the breaking point? Because we all have one. I think the thing is realizing what that breaking point is. When I was going through my divorce, I realized very, very quickly what my breaking point was. Like I figured it out quick. Uh, in court, in the divorce process, I saw something on the paperwork, and I saw how it was worded, and I knew in what I was reading that it wasn't truthful. And in the middle of court, in the middle of the proceedings, I blacked out, and I remember being called up next on the docket after reading this, and just the judge had to call my name two, three times, and it was quick and in and out. And I stood there, and I went to a place mentally where I said, the same thing that I put in my book, The Divorce Dad Reset. You are no longer a husband, but you are still a father. And I came to and went through. But in that moment, I realized that was my breaking point. That someone had all of the effort and love and everything I put in, which is, I say this, I wholly understand. I do not support it, but I wholly understand why so many of these men, and they flip and they crash out. They crash out. It's a lot to invest your heart, your blood, your sweat, your tears, your finance to set up something, a family, a business, a nonprofit, something that you have truly put your heart into, and to watch it fail. Not only to watch it fail, but for many of us to watch it fail, knowing that we were the reason for the failure, or at least part of it. Sucks. Sucks. So, what do you do instead of crashing out? First and foremost, like again, I will tell you, pray, take time, meditate, sit with God, read your word. Like I said, First Peter, cast your cares upon him. The second thing, I'll plug my book that's being rewritten and re-released, The Divorce Dad Reset. There's things that I put in there that lined out not just for fathers of divorce, but really, like I said, for the baby daddies, for anyone who separation from children. One of the main things, and when I go on podcasts, when I go on platforms, when I go speaking engagements, one of the main things that I say is there's a level of acceptance. Like that is one of the biggest things. You want to not crash out over all of these things that you just put into and it just got snatched from you. You want to not crash out. Accept the fact that you played some level of a role. Accept the fact that things will never be the same. You have to. You have to. When they send people to, what is it, AA, Al-Anon, Alcoholics Anonymous, and one of the things, you've seen it in movies 100 times, where they say, the first step is admitting that you're an alcoholic. The first step to not crashing out, to not harming yourself or others, is accepting that you played some level of a role in this. You played some level of a role in it. The other thing, things will never be the same. Again, I would encourage brothers out there. Hey, look, man. So you got divorced. Big deal. It happens. Yeah. Did you do some of it? Did you lie? Was there some infidelity? Was there some lack of trust? Was there whatever? Or was she just, did you just ignore all of the red flags and now you're at where you're at? Whatever it is, you're here now. You're here now. Accept that. Accept that things have changed. Once you've done that, now there's a level of calm. Okay, you know what, this isn't that, this is where I am. Okay, here's what I can do, putting all those things together, because your goal is to not crash out again. Sadly, too often on the news we're seeing these madmen, these dudes who just, they've reached a breaking point. And I think there are so many people around this. As I wrap this up, there, like I said, last month was Men's Mental Health Month, and I work for a large company, there was not a lot of discussion on it. There was not a lot of discussion on the news outside of, things on my social media, because my algorithm is mental health, family, faith, fishing, those the F words that are on my algorithm. But even last month, I can count on one hand the amount of family members that just called, not including like my mother, my father, or my sister. I could count on one hand the amount of relatives that just called, and the phone call wasn't long. They just called to check in. Hey man, you came across my mind. So I wanted to check in. Also include my brother in there, remove my brother. We talk like text and talk regularly. But I count on one hand the amount of relatives and family and friends that called to just be like, yo, you came across my mind, bro. I wanted to make sure you were good. How's everything? It's Men's Mental Health Month. We're coming out of COVID. Like I live 12, 13 states away from my kids. I have people who are not fans of me and view me as in a different light post divorce, even though I didn't really change. So when I say, what do you do instead of crashing out? I wholly understand it. I log on to social media randomly. I don't keep the app on the phone. That's why I don't post it. And even this, I don't do it as often. And I'll read stories, like I said, on the news. I'll see people who I know, women mostly, because in all honesty, if a woman comes online and drags her baby daddy or ex-husband, nobody's tripping. If a dude comes online, yeah, my baby mama tripped, that brother, you gonna get some text messages. Hey man, stop, man up. And that's the response, because we don't take into account that it's not man up. Maybe you should reach out and ask him, hey, what's going on, bro? This ain't you. But we don't do that. So again, as I wrap this up, instead of crashing out, if you are someone who loves someone around you, you care for that person, you care for that man. You know people's behaviors, you know how they move, you know their norms, you know how they act. When you see something that is inconsistent with how they normally operate, by all means, check in. Hey, bro, you good? You feeling all right? Are you okay? The behavior you exhibit, hey, look, man, you've been acting real different lately, and I don't like it. Be honest with them. Be upfront. There's no need for coded language in matters like that with tough conversations. People say, "Oh, you have to have tough conversations." Tough conversations call for tough words. I think I mentioned in the month of June, Men's Mental Health Month. I spoke to two relatives, two male relatives who I love dearly, and I outright asked them, "Are you thinking of killing yourself? Do you want to be here tomorrow?" I'm not talking about your kids, your mama, your cousins, your sister, anybody else. I'm talking about you. Do you want to live? And each of them gave me weird responses because they were, shocked that, who just asked somebody, are they going to kill themselves? Because you have to ask. Who just asked somebody, yo, are you thinking about hurting your family? Like that's crazy to ask somebody that. No, it's not crazy. It's really pretty sane, because it's a tough conversation. We have to use tough words, because we have people who are crashing out daily because they reach this breaking point, because they feel the world is too much for them. So you have to present them the option. I given this in the word of the week, when Jesus came to the city, and it was four partners, well, really five of them. They had five homeboys. One of them couldn't walk. And it's, to me, one of the coolest stories in the Bible, where they took him, went up the side of the house, broke up the roof, and they lowered their homeboy down, because they knew if we could get him to Jesus, our partner will be healed. But those were four people who cared so much for him that they said, look, bro, we'll take you. We'll push through this crowd. We'll climb up this roof. We'll drag you up. We'll break through this roof. We'll lower you down. That was four really, really solid dudes. Who has that? Like, you probably know somebody right now who is on the border, on the cusp of hurting themselves or someone else. Have you spoke to them? Have you outright used the words? Have you been clear with the language? Have you had a conversation with them? Have you told them that you loved them? Have you told them that they were valued? You invited them to church? Shoot, you invited them to the mosque? You invited them for coffee? Have you texted them? Have you done any of that? There's so many preventative measures in place. Suicide hotlines, men's groups, churches, so many things that are in place. And a lot of times, the most important thing that's in place in that moment could be you. It could be you. You could be the person who stops them from crashing out. And that's where we are. We have so many people who are their brothers who are walking around literally treating their lives as crash test dummies. Danger, because there's the world is on them and they just feel they can't go anymore. And they have people around them who notice it, but they don't engage. So that's my challenge to you, the people around. Love on someone who you know was there. For the people who are, for the brother who's listening to this or watching this, who you are, you feel like, hey, look, man, and I say this to the ex-spouses, ex-husbands, baby daddies, dads, long distance dads, whoever you are, don't crash out. This doesn't have to do with her. This doesn't have to do with your parents, your cousin. This doesn't even have to do with your kids. You love them dearly. You wouldn't trade them for anything in the world. But this ain't got nothing to do with your kids. It has everything to do with you. You have more to live for. You have so much more to live for. And instead of taking a momentary lapse in judgment, making a hasty decision that could affect the remainder of your life, man, don't do it. Don't do it. Sit down, meditate, talk to God, talk to someone. I pray that someone around you, even now, comes and intervenes for whatever poor decision you make in that momentary lapse. But that's it. I got nothing else for y'all. I'm back in Georgia. Florida was amazing. But anyway, man, I love y'all. I thank you for listening. I thank you for supporting. Like, subscribe, share, all of that. And watch Bridging Generations Voices of Men tonight. But I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. I thank you as always. Uh, Peace. God bless.